All right there. Hello, it's Mike here from musicradiocreative.com. 2 minutes to go. Nice to see David Silk in already. Daniel Matalon as well. Zyloch. Robert. Joe as well. All in so far on the live chat. If you've just appeared in the live chat on any of the platforms we're on now, say hello, announce yourself. It'd be lovely to know who's watching at this stage, so I can give you a quick shout out in the next 30 seconds before the intro music starts. Be delighted to do that. Talking about the Loudness War today. Josef, hello and good afternoon to you in Slovakia. Wonderful to have you watching. Just enough time to invite some friends in. Invite your friends along to come and watch. We'll talk about the Loudness War, attempting to sound as loud as you possibly can without too much distortion. All that and more coming up very, very soon. Hello, Beanie. Nice to see you.
Testing the left speaker. Left. Testing the right speaker. Right. Testing phaser. Full frequency sweep. Stand by
for Music Radio Creative Live with Mike Russell.
MRC Live. Music Radio Creative Live.
With Mike Russell.
Starting in 30 seconds.
Nice, thank you for that introduction. I am Mike Russell. Welcome to the live show, the live stream. Hope you're enjoying it so far. We've only just got started, but we're going to get into the Loudness War today. Trying to make your audio sound so loud that it almost distorts. Oh my goodness me. And we'll discover, is it worth it in the end, or is dynamic range a good thing? All right then, so welcome along. It's a wonderful Wednesday here in the studios on the Isle of Wight in the UK, and we are about to get started. A few shout-outs already. I can see people just arriving into the various chat rooms at the places that we do this show live. For instance, Calm Noise is watching on Twitch from Saudi Arabia. We've got Christos as well. Greetings from Greece. I love the Toots and the LOA show as well. Mr. Mega Radio UK tuning in. Beanie as well. Nice to see you guys. So we're going to talk all about the Loudness War today, what it is, and why probably the music industry is most guilty of it. But that doesn't mean the broadcasters and even the internet live streamers and podcasters are not guilty of participating in this war as well. First of all, just going to check the voicemail. Like I say, there is a phone line to call this show. You don't have to call it when I'm live. Occasionally I get the odd call when someone is feeling really brave and pumped up and wants to have a chat or ask me a specific question, they'll call in. Otherwise, the other 23 hours that I'm not broadcasting, you can leave me a voicemail message. I think this jingle is part of the Loudness War. It sounds very loud, doesn't it? Really easy to hear all of the instruments together, right? So, this is the phone number you need if you'd like to call me up, either when I'm live streaming or leave a voicemail.
415-800-1055.
Add +1 to that if you're outside the US. It's a US phone number, so check how much it will cost before you call.
MusicRadioCreative.com.
Oh, yes, I've got a flashing light. Somebody left a voicemail in the last 24 hours. Let's have a listen.
Hey, Mike, Matt Ramirez here. I've been listening to you for a while, so my first time getting on the live show, but I just want to say thank you for everything that you do. Happy holidays to you and Isabella. And you are an idol for me, trying to figure out how to get started in this thing and how to keep going with it. So thanks, man. I appreciate it, and thanks again for all you do.
Matt, you're awesome. Thank you for taking the time to call my voicemail line when I wasn't live streaming, so you left a nice message there. Really, really nice message from Matt. Thank you. It always brightens my day up when I get a message on my voicemail. You don't have to say you love the show or anything. You just say, hi, I just watched a few streams. I'm enjoying it. We'd love that. 415-800-1055 if you want to do that, either when I'm streaming or when I'm off. Now, I'm just going to go over to the screen share and try and introduce to you a little bit about the Loudness War. Let me just drag my copy of DJ Pro so it's not conflicting there with your chat, so you can see the chat. There's the chat, lovely chat. Here's my copy of DJ Pro. Got a couple of songs lined up so I can demo this to you. Something by the Beatles and something by Avicii, so something from the 60s and something from today. But first of all, what is the Loudness War? And why are we so concerned about it? I suppose I'd better get down to the why for this show today. So essentially, it's all about the increasing audio levels, primarily in music recordings, but also broadcasters. I'll talk more about broadcasters in a moment. Now, the Loudness War, you might have thought that's something that's only come along since maybe the 90s or late 80s when CDs and digital recording and mini discs, remember the mini disc, came along and all of that. But apparently, according to an article I found on Wikipedia, the Loudness War has existed since as early as the 1940s, even when music companies and music houses were mastering for 7-inch singles, which is amazing. Obviously, they didn't have the luxury of digital to see how loud the audio really was. But of course, loudness is not messing about with the audio, right? How the audio actually sounds dynamically or with regards to EQ. So when you are applying like a match loudness effect, and again, later on in the show, I'm going to get into Adobe Audition and show you some tools. In my opinion, Adobe Audition is the #1 audio editor in the world for playing with loudness standards. They have some really cool native plugins that work really well to monitor what your loudness is like and everything. But yeah, once you reach the maximum potential with loudness, which is essentially increasing or decreasing amplitude to hit a certain agreed upon standard, you can then go even further by adding dynamic range and EQ to that. And that's where broadcasters become really guilty, because it's kind of like, yeah, we're the loudest radio station on the dial! Because we got a really huge Optimod FM compressor. And I remember walking into the racks rooms of radio stations in years gone by when I used to work in radio, and the engineers there would boast about, hey, yeah, we just cranked it up another few dB and compressed the signal even further. So when you talk, it sounds like you're talking through a telephone because you're really crunched down like that, so you're so loud and there's no range in your voice. So when you go really quiet, it just goes like that, really loud, yet you're still quiet. And when you shout, it goes quieter and all of that. So dynamic range, we'll get into all of this so you can see it visually in a second. Now, obviously in extreme cases, when you try to make things sound basically it's trying to make audio sound as loud as possible without going above 0 dB, which is obviously the clipping point. But you do run the risk, running this loudness war of, digital distortion, clipping, all kinds of horrible audible sounds that we don't like. So you can sacrifice your audio quality big time if you get into loudness. But anyway, let's have a look at a few visual examples before I sort of go any more into the logistics of this loudness war. And you tell me what you think about loudness as a concept. And is it really important to have your audio sounding the loudest it possibly can? Or would you rather receive something that has a lot of dynamic range? Let's have a look. Let's get Adobe Audition here. And what I'm going to do is go into the multi-track. I'll start a new session here, and I'll go on to this little bit here. Arm this track to record from a stereo input on my mixing desk, and then I'm going to start recording, and then I'll just start playing a couple of these tracks. So we'll start off with a bit of the Beatles. Let's whack a bit of the Beatles in. Here go the Beatles with Strawberry Fields Forever. You can see there on the meter it's starting to pick up. That audio, might need to turn it up a little bit though. Let's just let the vocals come in. Okay. Nice. Don't want to play too much of that. Don't want to get a copyright infringement. But you get the idea. Okay, so that's a bit of the Beatles, and then we're going to go straight in to one of the most compressed parts of Avicii's Hey Brother, which is going forward, almost 50 years from Strawberry Fields. Ready? There we go. A real anthem. Hands in the air. Come on, it's Avicii, the Swedish DJ. Wonderful song, by the way. Sounds really good. It's an example of good processing on music, I would say, but still, okay, that's enough of Avicii. Let's switch that off, and we'll go back and we'll just compare those waveforms. What has 50 years done to music? Now, obviously, remember, this may not be the way that the music was initially mastered, because, of course, it might have been remastered to be uploaded to the various music services, and then I'm sure Spotify have their own algorithm that they're applying to music, so it all matches in volume. But you can already see here the difference between Avicii and Strawberry Fields. So, I mean, look at this. The difference is actually stunning. Can you see that? Over here on the left is the Beatles, Strawberry Fields, and over here on the right we got Avicii with Hey Brother. And as you can see, Avicii has applied a lot of compression here. This is all very, very compressed stuff. Even here, where it goes a little bit quiet in the music, there's just little tiny dips there, but most of it is, and what we can do, we can actually run some amplitude statistics to confirm this, but look at how quietly the Beatles Strawberry Fields starts off. Look at that. It's probably only hitting around -9 dB, whereas this is a consistent sort of -2, -1 dB. And then obviously when it kicks into the chorus, you'll see the dynamic range is greater because the spikes are going up and down, up and down, up and down. This is a 60s tune. This is a today tune, basically. Stunning. I didn't think there'd be that much of a difference, but there really is, isn't there? So let's run our trusty friend. This is the first thing I would do to find out what's going on with different tracks. Amplitude statistics window, which you can get to via window amplitude statistics. Really recommend this for analyzing any kind of dB, or it will also tell you another really handy thing. If you're worried that you've been clipping your audio, it has a value here that I'm pointing to with my mouse, possibly clipped samples. So if you worry when you're recording, you might have had a bit of clipping. This can tell you if any of your audio is clipping. Obviously, you want to try and fix that. And I might show you how that works in practice, actually, by whacking on some audio to a new file before I analyze any of this audio. And let me just whack the gain right up. Sorry, this is going to probably deafen you. Hello! Whoa. Okay, sorry, I hope I didn't deafen you there by turning that up loud, but I definitely distorted there. So let's run amplitude statistics, first of all, on my own audio here. And boom, yeah, possibly clip samples. Yes, it's a no-brainer. 3,676 possibly clip samples. And the best thing is, you've got a little pinpoint here. Boom. If you click that pinpoint, it's going to take you to the start of those possibly clip samples. And how accurate is that? My first possibly clip sample is right there, and as you can see, yes, it's gone beyond recovery here, above the point of no return, which is 0 dB. Even if I try and turn that down now, you're going to see it's still going to be distorted like heck. So really good amplitude statistics there for just discovering any possibly clipped samples, especially if you're trying to make your audio sound as loud as possible. But let's go back now to the music here and run amplitude statistics first of all on this one. Scan selection. As you can see, nothing is clipped here, but we can see the peak amplitude is -0.1 dB. Click the point and then it will jump the cursor here to where the -0.1 dB clip is. It's right about there. And we'll do this for Avicii and see what Avicii's peak amplitude is. Scan selection. -0.49 dB. So when you're compressing to try and hit a loudness standard, you're not necessarily peaking as loud as the older songs, which is the funny thing with this whole loudness war, right? It's like, what sounds better, something with nice dynamic range or something that's really compressed? Now, in broadcasting, you might say everything should be compressed as heck. And I could do this to this Beatles track, even though it starts off with the audio only on the left channel and then comes to the right. I could add an effect here, like the multi-band compressor, and there's a great couple of compressors here. Let's put it into preview mode that can mimic really what I would call bad radio compression, like the broadcast preset. Look at that. It will literally, look, it's crushing that Beatles track. That Beatles track will probably sound awful now. You can really hear everything. Let's get straight through to here.
Let me take you down,
and then switch off that compression. You see, I prefer it more without compression. Again, another thing you can add is Pop Master again. Real hard brick wall limiter implemented here. And again, you can see, hang on, let me just make sure I'm implementing this correctly. Apply. And again, Pop Master has really crushed everything down, making the Beatles track. Well, look at that. The brick wall limiter, you can see clipping in there and just trimming off the tops of that. So again, over here, we can see the difference between Avicii, and the average RMS amplitude is minus 15, around about minus 15 dB. Over here, scan selection, and the average RMS amplitude is minus 24. So again, a big difference here. If I was to go into the multi-track and, again, take these samples, something I use to get things to the same loudness is select everything and then right-click, and we're matching clip loudness. You'll probably notice it will either turn up or keep the Beatles track the same volume, and it will probably turn down Avicii's track. And look at that, yeah. Beatles is near enough to 0 dB, so nice mastering, nice loudness on that. And then Avicii down to minus 7 dB. So when we actually mix those down, because Avicii's track has been so heavily processed, when we look at this, we'll now see the Beatles track is a lot louder in terms of dB compared to Avicii's track, which has been turned down. Now, just because a song was mastered initially in a great way with lots of dynamic range does not mean that over the process of time it cannot deteriorate because of other mastering and loudness methods that have been applied. I want to get further into that, and I want to show you how time has affected particularly Michael Jackson's recordings. But before I do that, it's always nice to look at you and see what you're doing, because you're a big part of my live show. It's always good to have you there in the live chat. Let's feature some Q&A.
Audio production and more. This is Mike Russell on musicradiocreative.com.
So we got Felix watching on Facebook Live right now. It's lovely to have you there, Felix. A lot of people watching on Facebook Live, including Will Darling, my friend Will. Nice to see you, Will. Simon Garrett as well, and Mahish as well. So lots of you watching over there. Calm Noise said they're in from Saudi Arabia. Also saying, R.I.P. my ears. Yes, when I did a little bit of distortion there, it was a little bit loud. Sorry if I really went over the top there. Someone's calling. Yay! Hello, Music Radio Creative. You're on. Who's this?
Hi, Mike. It's Kenny. It's the Yellowway Show. How are you doing, my friend?
Kenny, the Yellowway Show. I'm doing really good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. First of all, I've got to tell people I've had a lot of jingles from you over the years, and I've never been disappointed. Your creative genius is just amazing, my friend. But I do have a question for you about the Loudness Wars. How would you actually deal with if you accidentally picked up background noise? How would you deal with that?
So if you picked up background noise when you're recording a show and you want to get rid of that background noise?
Yeah, if you're trying to do everything that you've done with during the Loudness Wars, you know, you compressed it and all that kind of stuff, but you've also picked up background noise or hiss or noise from your microphone. In my case, my microphone emits a low hum.
Right.
How would you get rid of that?
So the best way to do that, I would say, and it doesn't come so much into matching audio to a certain loudness standard, because essentially you're just trying to increase or decrease the amplitude there. That would be a process where I would say I would take the audio and I would try and eliminate that noise using either noise removal or a noise gate, a downward expander, something like that. Kenny, if you haven't checked out some of the videos I have done, there is a live stream that I did, let me have a look, on my channel on Monday. If you go back to Monday's live stream, there's a show I did, noise removal. It was aimed at podcasters, but it could apply to you if you've got a radio show or an internet show. Go and watch that one, a few of the other streams. Some really good tips there on either just removing the frequencies with the bad noise in, or using a gate or something like that to just stop that noise getting through. And then you can apply your compression, your EQ, without sort of any fear of bringing that background noise up. Because I guess your worry, Kenny, is that you're going to apply lots of heavy compression and have that noise really lift up, so it's kind of competing against your voice.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah. Just Call Me Chad said low hum as in ground loop. I don't know. I know nothing about microphones, but that's for another conversation. Thanks very much for your tutorials, my friend.
My pleasure, Kenny, and thank you for calling.
All the best.
All the best. See you later. Bye. That's Kenny from the Elway Show. Lovely to hear from Kenny. And yes, Kenny has been a long-standing client of Music Radio Creative. We've done lots of jingles for you, Kenny, and really, really enjoyed speaking to you. It's always nice to speak to someone on this show. So thank you very much. And remember, you can
415
call in
800 1055.
+1 if you're outside the US. Love to hear from you. Get involved with the show today by calling in live or leaving a voicemail message when I'm not streaming. And Jason Levine's in the house. Wow. Hey, Jason. Jason, fantastic guy who I mentioned at the end of yesterday's live stream. If you've not checked out Jason's channel, you really ought to get over there. He's featured as a featured channel on my channel. So if you just click over to Jason's channel, you'll see multiple Adobe Audition tutorials. But not only that, fantastic stuff in Premiere Pro, in After Effects as well. And I can see Jason is listening while driving in the desert. That is so cool. And so different to, at the moment, we're about to get the worst winter ever here in the UK. So yes, I do crave some kind of desert heat at the moment. But yes, and I've seen your video, Jason, of the you had a 3D camera driving through the desert, which was really cool. So nice to see you, Jason. Also, Robert and Mr. Mega Radio UK talking about various different ways to even out audio. Robert suggesting stereo tool. Mr. Mega Radio UK says the Beatles track sounds better without compression. Exactly. Dynamic range, I think, is a good thing. And Just Call Me Chad, referring back to Kenny's call there, low hum, as in ground loop, could well be around the 50 hertz or 60 hertz range, could be affecting your audio there. So again, nothing really to do with loudness there. That's more noise removal or eliminating bits and bobs from your audio. So yeah, I mean, there are many tools that you can use and that are implemented. For instance, from my understanding of uploading music to services like iTunes or Spotify, many of these services are implementing their own algorithms now to process music after it's been mastered and uploaded. So essentially, you are, even if you're not hitting the loudness standard you should be, something like Apple will have their own thing in place to, again, alter your music. And the more you're not mastering it or adding the correct effects to it, the more Apple is going to change how your music sounds, or Spotify or whatever else. Something else really good for podcasters is a very good tool, Auphonic. I think it's Auphonic. Let me look it up and see whether I can show you this tool on the screen. Now, I have never used this tool, but every podcaster I ever speak to says this is the best thing they've ever used. Let me load it up and show you on the screen just here. Auphonic, automatic audio post-production for podcasters, broadcasters, radio shows, movies, screencasts, and more. I think a big part of their bread and butter is the podcasting market, and they do pretty much everything for you. So if you're worried about going through using some of the tools I'm about to show you in Audition, this kind of has an intelligent leveler, but they also have loudness normalization to broadcast standards. So that is a really, really cool thing to have there. Audio restoration, algorithms as well, speech recognition. It really does magic, and literally every podcaster I've heard talk about Auphonic sings the praises of it. So that might be something worth looking into. Get back to some more of your questions and chat as well in just a moment. But let's hop back over here and have a look at some of the tools. So we have just mixed this down from the multi-track, and I did actually use the match loudness on here. And as you'll see, this is one of my favorite things. Whenever I'm producing any audio and I throw a load of audio into the multi-track, I will always usually use match clip loudness and set it, I mean, I always have it set at minus 16 LUFS, the kind of internet or podcasting standard. You might go for minus 23 or something else, depending on if you have a specific standard that you're working to. But for me, it's just helpful to throw in quiet voiceovers, loud sound effects, big music beds that are processed, other things with dynamic range, and have Audition work out what the perceived loudness of everything should be. Now, if I go back to this, a way you can check to see, this is the original file. If I go to the mix down here, and we'll go into effects here, in the special area here, there is a loudness radar meter. This has been around, I think, for a year or two in Adobe Audition. And it's great because you can find out, using this radar, whether the audio is hitting the loudness area you want it to be. So let's have a look. As you can see here, lots of different broadcast standards. EBU, which I think is something to do with the European Broadcasting Union. They're trying to push broadcasters to a similar standard rather than trying to be the loudest on the dial or on the television tuner. CD mastering, cinema, but I think I already have this set up. And obviously this is the radar. I'll show you how this works in just a moment. Over in settings, you can say target loudness should be minus 16 LUFS, which is what I've tried to get inside the multi-track. You've got a radar speed of 4 minutes. You can make this shorter, 1 minute, so we can get 1 minute of audio. Radar resolution, you can choose different dB resolutions there. But the most important thing is you can go for LUFS or LKFS. There's so many different standards here. I usually aim for LUFS here, and different loudness standards, peak indicators as well. So if the audio is peaking, you can see all of that. And then if I start to play this back, the radar will paint a picture of how the audio is looking. So let's just listen to this. So as you can see at the moment, minus 24, because there is a lot of dynamic range in this song. And then when we get to the main bit, you'll see how suddenly it goes up. And we're going up to minus 20 or so. And then we'll get into Avicii's track and see how Avicii's track does. And again, that's a solid minus 18.9. It's not moving at all. Wow. Look at that loud. You can see how different those patterns look on the loudness radar going from the 60s to today. Now, another thing in Adobe Audition, obviously using the loudness radar to see how your audio is faring. If you record something like a podcast, let me record some podcast audio here. So I'm just going to record in, no preview editor, and we'll say, hello, this is Mike Russell, and you are listening to the Music Radio Creative Live podcast. And then I'll stop this recording and find my audio here. Okay, so with this audio, I can take this and I can match the loudness here in this match loudness window. Now, if you don't know how to get the match loudness window up, you can get that from the window menu in Adobe Audition and go to match loudness and then drag in that Untitled 5 recording that I made. You can batch do this with a lot of files. So if you've got a lot of podcasts or a lot of other audio you'd like to match to the same setting, you can do that by dragging all of these files. For instance, let's drag some of these files that I already have open in. And the first thing you can do is, actually the first thing you'll get when you open this window for the first time, you'll have match loudness settings off. So you'll literally just get a blank window with nothing. So the first thing I'd recommend you do is click this one with the sort of waveform and the search icon. If you click this, it will compute the loudness of each track you've dropped in. And there you go. You see it's done it. Untitled 3, I think, is an empty file, so let's remove that. So you can see that Untitled 4, which is the audio recording I made earlier, has a maximum loudness or a loudness of minus 17 LUFS, whereas Untitled 5, minus 37 LUFS. Also has the total RMS, the peak, and the true peak values as well. And now I can go into match loudness settings, and we have a plethora of different standards here to go to. You can go for loudness standards, or you can go for peak amplitude as well. So a peak amplitude is kind of almost like a normalization, really. So we could say we want the volume to peak at minus 1 dB, run it, and it will run it on there. But as you can see, two different loudness standards still. Untitled 4, minus 6 LUFS. Untitled 5, minus 16 LUFS, which is perfect, actually. We wanted minus 16 LUFS. So that has made the peak now at minus 1 dB. Again, back into amplitude statistics, scan selection, and yes, the peak amplitude is minus 1 dB. Click find, and there we go. There's the first point, and I think the only point in this audio where it peaks at minus 1 dB. Over to Untitled 4, scan that selection, and again, you'll see minus 1 dB is the peak amplitude there, and that is happening around where the cursor is as well. But if we select a loudness standard, there's loads of them. I don't know enough about them to tell you more, but suffice to say, if you work in broadcasting, you may well be familiar with some of these standards. So let's go for this one, the ITU. This is a long name, isn't it? ITU-RBS.1770-3 loudness standard. And the target loudness I usually have is minus 16 LUFS for podcasting. Then you've got tolerance, max true peak level, again, minus 1 dB. And there's even some peak limiting as well that is applied in this particular standard. So this is going to slightly limit the audio that's coming out one end. And let's run this now and see how this affects our audio. So run. So again, this has been pushed down because of that horrible distortion I've got there, minus 16 LUFS. And again, we'll go over to the other file and we will see That is also at minus 16 lux. So really good for hitting your loudness standards. That is the Match Loudness panel. It's a window inside Adobe Audition CC that you can access. Let's hop back in. Always good to get a phone call from you. I will get back into more of the mechanics behind loudness standards. Obviously, we've looked at... Oh, one thing I will show you before I go back into more of the theory and tools in Audition, I wanted to show you this. Over in it's something I found on Wikipedia. Now, this is an audio waveform analysis, actually in an old version of Adobe Audition, that someone else has done, not me, of Michael Jackson and his tune Black or White. I'm sure most of us are familiar with that song. So on the original Dangerous album in 1991, the waveform looked like this. And then when History came out in 1995, the waveform looked like this. Aha, yes, we can see that the audio has just increased in amplitude a little bit, maybe not too much compression going on. And then when it got to 2007 and Michael Jackson's Ultimate Collection was released, look at what's going on here. Now, it seems that it's gone right up to tickling 0 dB there, and definitely you can see more mastering. I think that's a simple increase in amplitude between 91 and 95, but definitely in 2007, heavy compression, equalization, and possibly other mastering tools have been applied to make it look like that. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I'd love to know your opinion in the chat, but let's get back to some of your wonderful questions. So it's wonderful to be here halfway through the show, by the way. If you want to call in, just like we had a call from the Elway show earlier, 415-800-1055 is the number. That's +1 415-800-1055 to get through.
This is Mike Russell from musicradiocreative.com. This is Mike Russell on musicradiocreative.com.
So let's have a look at some of your questions now. For some reason, my Q&A is not working so well today, so I can't feature your questions on the screen in a lower third like I usually do. But I will endeavour to get through more questions because I can see there are a fair few, and I'm doing my best to read as many as I can. Ash Styles is in. I've heard there are certain plugins that will boost perceived loudness and make the track sound a lot louder than tracks with higher dB. Oh, yes, plugins. Now, briefly, I've touched on that, but there is a third-party plugin from Waves I'll show you in just a moment. There's a native plugin in Audition, and I mentioned Orphonic, which is a web-based kind of audio processor, but there is another one I'll show you in just a moment, especially for you, Ash, who says, I've tuned in late, but I'm here now. So, Ash, good to have you there. Yeah, let's look at more plugins in just a moment. What else have we got? Beanie from Australia says PewDiePie, or is it PewDiePie? PewDiePie, I think. That famous YouTuber, yeah, I know who PewDiePie is, lives here in the UK, I believe, takes loudness deliberately to crunching extremes. Yes, that's the thing. I mean, even when I'm web broadcasting, we've spoken about this on previous live streams, I'm not just giving you the raw signal from my mic here. This is going through a DBX286S. It's running into a Soundcraft Signature 12 MTK mixing desk, which again, I'm rolling EQ on there from there. And what I've thought about multiple times, which I've not actually got around to doing, is buying a sort of compressor to then, again, compress my output. That might affect things I'm trying to show you inside Audition. But I just thought to make my audio sound really loud on YouTube, it might be a good idea. So good question. Hi to Ross on air. Daniel Matalon's in as well. Robert Vincent as well, catching up with the live stream right now. Riste is there. Hi, Riste. Nice to see you. Mike, is there a way to sort your plugins inside Adobe Audition? Well, let's briefly cover that one because that's a very short one to answer for you. Plugins are arranged in many ways. Audio Plugin Manager will help you sort out what you've got installed. So as you can see, I've got loads. I've got stuff from Waves, stuff from Isotope, stuff from Melda Productions. And really, this is just a sort of install or don't install. So if I want to uninstall something like MXXXX, whatever that is, I can untick it and click OK, and it'll uninstall that plugin from Audition. You can't really arrange them in the menu, but there are various ways they appear. So VST will just give you the effect and then waves and then everything in one menu. Audio units, which is Mac only, will categorize by plugin manufacturer and then throw you a just huge list of all the plugins. I really like the way VST3 does it because they give you the same as you get in the effects menu of Audition. You get analyzer, delay, filter, generator, and then you can find the plugins you've got from various different manufacturers. So Riste, I really hope that that helps you there. What else have we got? Beatles track sounds good without compression. Absolutely, it certainly does. Jeff, I use the desktop app version, I think, talking about Auphonic there. Yes, absolutely. Steve Moore, presumably Mixcloud has its own algorithms too that alter uploaded audio. Some do, some don't. Can't speak for Mixcloud itself. I know that SoundCloud is another one. I'm not sure if they mess with things. Spreaker, that I use for podcast hosting, I know for a fact that they will not change the content of your audio, so they won't process it or change it. But if you don't upload it as exactly one file format, which is MP3 stereo, 44/100 hertz sample rate, hertz, I think I said, 16-bit stereo, then they'll resample it and you can lose some quality there. What else have we got? Lots of really interesting comments coming in. Omer's watching from Croatia. How do I know what is the standard dB volume for various types of voiceover? Is there any useful source to know these standards? Google is a good friend there. Check for your industry. I know podcasters try to head for -16 LUFS. Audiobooks, it'll be something else. But go to the websites that you know are the authorities in your particular niche. So I see Calm Noise, you mentioned their audiobooks. If you want to get into audiobook recording, I would go to somewhere like Audible, and I would type into Google, let me do this now, I would type in Audible loudness standards, and you can bet your bottom dollar that they will have, I'm sure, a page. There we go. I'm just going to type Audible loudness. Right, what have we got here? Audible loudness standard, maybe? That they will have standards they want. Right, okay, yeah, here we go. Actually, it's via ACX, because I think ACX is the overall thing for Audible, isn't it? That's a technical term, isn't it? Thing. And they've got a whole page here, audio submission requirements. So, yeah, I know audiobooks, it's a big thing right now, particularly in the voiceover industry. So, obviously, they give you stuff about it must be consistent, it must sound good, it must have opening and closing credits, all those technical stuff. But here's the stuff that you must comply to if you want to upload it to ACX, which is essentially a channel for Audible. I think it's the Amazon Creator Exchange, something like that. Others will know more than I probably on this. So, yeah, you must contain one chapter per file. It's got to have a running time of no longer than 2 hours, 120 minutes, room tone at the beginning and end, and be free of any extraneous sounds, so noise reduction can be good for that. But here's the important thing when we're getting to loudness. Measure between -23 and -18 dB RMS and have -3 dB peak values and a maximum -60 dB noise floor. Very important stuff. All of that can be measured inside match loudness and amplitude statistics inside Audition. That's why if you're recording audiobooks, Adobe Audition is going to be your best friend for getting all these standards up to scratch. And then they request a 192 kilobits per second or higher MP3 at CBR constant bit rate 44.1 kilohertz. I think I said earlier 44,100 hertz, that is. So there you go. So do check for your industry. That's the best way for you, Calm Noise. If you search for podcasting, there's a lot of podcast tutorials on the same thing. What else have we got? When you upload audio to the web, the quality changes. Yeah, in some cases, certainly hosts do that. But if you upload it to your own web host, you might get away with keeping or retaining the quality. What else have we got? Hi to you, Mike, from Yusuf from Morocco. Please, can you tell me how I can master audio for FM radio stations with heavy sound treatment? How do you deal with that? Oh, that's coming up in just a moment. We'll get into some plugins. I know you want some plugins. Paige is here. Nice to see you, Paige. Finishing voiceovers. Brilliant to have you watching and tuning in, Paige. You're very, very welcome here. And yeah, just loads of stuff going on in the chat box today. So do keep stuff coming in. But like I say, let's get back in to some more technicalities and plugins. So it's a long ongoing debate, and music sales obviously now today, because music is where loudness is kind of key. Everyone has to get that right. And if you go again to iTunes or Spotify, you'll find various standards. But yes, it's moving towards obviously downloads now. So we're not so much using CD or mini disc or tape anymore. And we can start to get more uniform standards. Apple Soundcheck, that's the term I was looking for on iTunes, and replay gain technology can do things. But there are also sites out there. I did mention Orphonic, but there's also a site I found recently called emastered.com. And I think we've actually got a sign-up link to that, mrc.fm/emastered. Here we go. You can master your track instantly. So this is really cool. It's an online mastering engine, easy to use, sounds incredible. And it's made by Grammy Award-winning engineers, which is cool. So let's just take a jingle or something that I've worked on recently. Let's open something quite recent. What have we got? Or maybe go through some of my old sessions here. Let's go to sessions. Sessions, producer sessions, and we'll have a look at one over here. What should we have a look at? This one here. Oh, that's a very small jingle. Let's find something with a little bit more going on. What have we got here? Has that got a little bit more going on?
Mr. B, bringing you his mix and blend of R&B, soul, garage, and bashment.
Let's mix that down and take a look at the waveform before mastering. Okay, that's the waveform before mastering. And I'm going to save that into the downloads folder. Let's just call it unmastered. So yeah, emastered is a pretty cool tool. Unmastered.wav, let's keep it in high quality .wav file. And we'll throw that in and just see how the WAV file looks different when we get this back from this emastered service. Again, mrc.fm/emastered if you're interested in signing it up and trying it for yourself. I think they've got different plans, pay monthly and pay as you go and stuff like that. So definitely worth getting into it. It's a bit of an arms race, the Loudness War, isn't it? Really, trying to sound as loud as you possibly can. So it's doing all its magic here. I love the little prompts it gives you. Right, okay, it's done. Okay, so
Mr. B, bringing you his mix and blend.
oh yes, you can hear that. Sounds a lot cleaner, and it's got some nice processing on. Let's download the HD WAV file here. And so now that is emastered, unmastered. Pull that in, and look, this is the difference now between mastered and unmastered. There's the mastered version, and there's the unmastered version. And it'll be interesting to see in amplitude statistics what we've got going on here. So peak amplitude minus 0.17 dB, total RMS amplitude of minus 15.98, which is cool. And then go back to unmastered. And we'll look at amplitude statistics here. Again, minus 2.11 dB, and the average RMS amplitude minus 49 dB. So yeah, big difference there between mastered and unmastered. Anyway, do keep your comments coming in. I am absolutely desperate to mention more of your comments on this show, or generally talk about or answer anything that you would like answered. So if you've got anything that you'd like to talk about on the show, either post it in the comments for me right now, or you can call in, and I love to hear from you. I've got a phone line. It'd be lovely if someone would call in towards the end of the show and have a quick chat. It's a US phone number. You can call it any time of the day. When I'm on, you'll get through to me, and when I'm off, you'll get the voicemail line.
415-800-1055.
So go ahead, give it a call. +1 if you're outside the US. Check before you call.
MusicRadioCreative.com.
You never want to be landed with a huge phone bill, do you? Just for calling. But anyway, 415-800-1055. Be lovely to hear from you. Before I get back to the chat and have a look at a bit more of what has been going on, something else you can use, and let me just give you an example on one of our library effects. Just going to go into my producers section here. Producers library. There we go. Producers library. Here it is. And we'll hop into music beds. And we'll grab something with a bit of dynamic range. So maybe Christmas festive holidays as we're getting to that time of year. Or this. Nice. Okay, so that's a merry festive song. And if you want to do some mastering, there are two ways you can go about it. Inside Audition, I've demonstrated this many times, the mastering tool inside Special. But if you go into Waves plugins, actually in VST3 it's under Mastering Waves, the Infected Mushroom Pusher is a brilliant mastering tool for really kind of spunking up your audio. And actually, I'm not sure if Infected Mushroom Pusher is on sale or not from Waves at the moment, but I know they've got a massive Black Friday sale. And if you want to get a further 10% off any of the prices you see on the Waves site, we've got some really good stuff on at the moment on sale for Black Friday. You can get a further 10% off by accessing Waves website via mrc.fm/waves. Let's just type mushroom. There we go. Infected Mushroom Pusher is on at $49 at the moment. So, yeah, that's a pretty reasonable price. I think I got it on sale when it was $29. So you might want to see if they discount it further on this coming Friday for Black Friday. But it's brilliant. Designed by some leading electronic musicians. And they've got some wonderful dials on here to really beef up your music. Now, it is designed for electronic music, but let's just give it a go on this Christmas song. So we got the input, obviously the input gain, the high and the low, the body, the push, the stereo image, and the magic in the middle. So let's give it a go and see what happens. Okay, here we go. Adding the highs. And as I do that, the sleigh bells really pop out, don't they? Let's add the lows on. Oh, yep. Can hear the low end pumping up. Body, let's play with that. Push, this is really going to affect it. Even to the point of distortion there. Let's go to a preview window so we can see what's going on here. Clip up. Calculating very quickly down there. And you can change it to the mode of clip or limit here. So look at that, that's clipping or limiting. Let's limit and see how that changes things for the audio. Again, super crushed there. Slightly different algorithm going on there. And let's try some magic as well. Not showing so audibly on a track like this, but you can absolutely bet if you go to something like dance or trance and bring something like this in. Let's find something really dancey. Something like this, Infected Mushroom Pusher, will have a massive effect on a track. This hasn't been overly mastered, this track, so let's try it on this track and see how it sounds. Infected Mushroom Pusher stereo. Let's go back to our defaults here. And actually, I'll go through a few of the presets so you can see what it does. So, Becoming Insane. Whoa, that's loud, isn't it? Beef Me Up, Scotty. D harsher. Back to default. Increase the push. Increase the low. And bring the high out too. Add the magic. Body. Stereo image. Wow. Yeah, that's cool. And with a stereo image, really makes that audio very wide indeed. So yeah, it's something I like. Sometimes I'll run this over jingles that I've finished, particularly if they're designed to be played on internet radio. They're not going out on an FM station. It's just a good all-round plugin, very easy to use, no kind of complicated settings. It's just a bunch of dials that you can twist. So it comes from Waves Audio. If you want to get 10% off the current price, mrc.fm/waves for that. Let's hop back in and have a look at more of those questions you've been asking. So many wonderful comments on the show today, so I really appreciate that.
Audio production and more. This is Mike Russell on musicradiocreative.com.
Okay, so remember, yes, you can post your questions if you're watching live in the live stream or afterwards, of course, or you can give me a phone call. You have around 14 minutes left to do that if you're watching the live stream now. I'd love to hear from someone. 415-800-1055. Daniel says, you mentioned the modern track is compressed. How can you tell from the preview if a track is compressed? Very good question. Let's hop back into the screen share here, and I will hop back to... where is it? My audio recording. Let's have a look here. Where's my original audio recording? Here we go. Let's just normalize these. I've got my N hotkey assigned for normalization, which is good. So you can tell that a track is sort of overly compressed and has a lot of extra stuff going on inside it. If it is essentially a sausage, the more sausage-like, the more compressed it is. Whereas this one has a lot of peaks and valleys, and you can see that's not so compressed. Something I always like to demonstrate with in the special mastering effect here in Adobe Audition. If we go to the default here, so everything is off or at its default settings, let's actually apply it to both tracks, not only to Avicii, but the original Beatles Strawberry Fields we had loaded. Now you'll see in the bottom, this preview window will show in real time what's going on. Loudness Maximizer, when I turn this up to full, this is going to add such harsh compression, you will see what happens. Now, that is a really, really compressed track. Something that looks essentially like a clipped sausage. Even Strawberry Fields, look at that. I mean, that's going to sound absolutely awful. It's even tried its best to compress a track that doesn't exist over on the right-hand channel there. But yeah, Loudness Maximizer is one of the harshest forms of compression I've ever seen in a mastering tool from Adobe Audition, so make sure you use that one wisely. Down to 20% and you see just a bit more compression going on. You've got exciters and reverb as well in this mastering track. But great question, Daniel. And yeah, just taking a look at the waveform. If it looks like a flat line or a brick wall or a sausage, lots and lots of compression. If it looks more like a kind of wiggly waveform, then more dynamic range. Absolutely, just by looking at the track. Just Call Me Chad says, off topic, but what are you using to do your green screen? A lot of folk actually ask about that from time to time, and I can give you a little glimpse behind the scenes if you'd like. I just have to push the studio button, boom, and there you go. Everything's disappeared, and now you see me naked in my studio with the green screen behind me. This is a very, very simple curtain that I purchased from Amazon here in the UK. I think it cost me about 20 quid, and yeah, it's amazing. It just hangs from a pole in my studio, which is a tension pole that goes from side to side. Just hung it up like that, and it does the job for me. It just literally is right behind me. I have two LED lights in front of me. I don't have a backlight, but it's sufficient for a very small amount of space that I have to work in here. And then obviously if I go back to my lower third, you'll see the magic. It really is fantastic. And then the chroma key that I do, so that's keying out the green in the background, is done solely via OBS Studio, which is what I use to live stream. It's brilliant. Really, really am liking OBS Studio, and the chroma key in it is absolutely brilliant. I've also used Wirecast to live stream, and the chroma key in that is pretty good too. So that's good for live streaming. I think there are other plugins you can use on your webcam like Minicam and things like that, or Cam Twist. But yeah, really, really, really good job. The only thing I've got to make sure not to do is wear a green shirt or dye my hair green because it will disappear. But there you go. Really good question. Just Call Me Chad. Praise Worship. Could you do a tutorial on convolution reverb? Say you have a recording of a speech in an arena and you want to sound like you're speaking in that very same arena. Ooh, Praise Worship. A great idea for a future tutorial. I'm going to note that one down and see if we can do a future tutorial on that for you. Great question. Sorry that I'm not featuring them, your questions, in the lower third today. Just so happens that the lower third app that I usually use is not working today. Anthony's watching from Malta. Lovely to see you tuned in there, Anthony. So many of you asking great questions. Sonny Young says, your tutorials have helped me in school. Thank you. Well, Sonny, it's my pleasure, and I'm really glad that you're really benefiting from these streams and the other videos that I put out on the channel. What else have we got here? Zyloch says, I take a break for 5 minutes and the whole jingle is prepared. How about that? Interesting stuff. Is magic wet? I don't know what that means. Just call me Chad, but thanks for the comment. We also got, and I am going to say your name correctly. Oh, hang on. First, a phone call. Hello, Music Radio Creative. You're on live. Who's this?
Mike, hi there, it's David. David Lewis.
Oh, David, it's wonderful to hear from you.
I phone you every now and again, don't I?
I know, you're like a regular caller.
I do my bit. This is fascinating me today because it's something I take a lot of care over. So I do 3 live radio shows a week,
Yeah.
and I record those then and then put them out as a podcast myself. And so what I've been doing recently is just sticking to what you've suggested, that minus 16 lufts. But it's interesting because other guys' podcasts are louder, but I've kind of gone the route now that loudness isn't necessarily what I'm at, as opposed to having a little bit of range in there.
Exactly.
So I go through Mixcloud and I use Podbean as a host, which obviously then goes over to iTunes. But I've been using your single band compressor idea and just checking all the levels on that. And then once I've done that, I take it into match loudness and go to minus 16 lufts. But it's this loudness thing is fascinating me, because I couldn't work out why other podcasts were louder than mine, but not necessarily better because of it.
Exactly. And how do you find that works for you? I mean, when you are saying you're uploading to Podbean and Mixcloud, do you notice, David, that they alter your audio at all, or is that the case?
Interestingly, Podbean now, they've just updated their app, and Podbean is obviously to do this Loudness War. I've got a button now you can tap to maximise loudness, which I don't like.
Wow.
Because it's literally a button on the app on the phone. You can just hit it and suddenly, bang, you're just loud, which I don't particularly like. You know, I try to craft my podcast as careful, the recordings I take on Audition, as carefully as possible. Mixcloud doesn't seem to do much. I think the audio in iTunes sounds better, I think. Could just be, but I don't notice them doing too much with it. But I know some of the guys send their podcast and go to minus 16 RMS, I think, as opposed to lufts. And I don't really understand what the difference between the RMS algorithm is and the luft. Is there much of a difference?
So a different standard. I'm not entirely au fait with it myself, but I know that most podcasters I hear talk about using lufts. So while I don't know exactly what the difference is, I would imagine you'd be getting a different result. So you wouldn't be entirely matching.
And I'm sorry, I won't keep much longer because
No, go.
But with a podcast such as mine, which is basically music, just with me sort of boring me talking in between the tracks, is that minus 16 still applying when it's or are there different standards if it's predominantly a music?
So essentially,
show you're uploading, or
what you want to try and do, David, with your show is get the levels on everything you're doing in the show. So when you're playing a music track, you want to try and get everything about as level as possible, so sounding at the same volume. And then loudness is an overall standard you apply to the end product. So actually, you reminded me of something I used to do in radio. Now, I'm not sure if you do this, David, when you're queuing up tracks or getting tracks ready to play. What I used to have to do, and this has probably changed a bit now with digital, but when I first worked in radio and I was working with vinyl and CDs, as I'm sure you're aware, at the top of a mixing desk, you have the gain pots, don't you, where you can turn things up and down. And what I used to have to do for every track, and what every host had to do, is pre-fade before they started playing the music, and then they'd have to twist the gain pot until the meter was, and we had an agreed upon peak area, and I can't remember the name of the meter. It wasn't a VU meter. It was something.
I've got a PPM.
PPM meter, that's it. It was a PPM meter.
Yeah, I've got one in the studio.
Brilliant.
It's a great visual guide.
Isn't it great? And I don't know what the number was. Was it between 5 and 6, about 5.5 you needed
6.
to get?
That's right.
Yeah.
So I run a test tone every, tonight before I go in there. I'll go in Audition, in Tractor actually is where I play my music through. I put a test tone in of minus 8 dB and I check them peaking at minus 6 on the PPMs, because then I know that when I go out to the streamer, to Solar Radio, for them to push it out, that I'm going to be hitting their servers, and they do compress. That's why there's no need for me to compress, because the radio station
does it already.
Compress my live signal. Yeah, because that goes out to a data center, and because obviously they get some studios sending in shows that aren't of the right volume. I understand they have to have compression, but that's why I don't add anything to it for the live show, because it's going to get compressed. Whatever I do, how good my audio is, it will still be compressed.
So the idea is you want to make it as great as you possibly can, so that you give them the best product to work with. And I think, David, you'll win over other hosts and podcasters that do it another way. So you having a lot of dynamic range and taking care of that means that when you do hit the compressor, it's not going to be all kind of crushed down and woof, woof,
working hard,
like
exactly.
That. Yeah,
and like tonight, I've got 3 very different shows, and tonight's shows are like straight ahead blue note jazz, so you can imagine there's a lot of dynamic range in there.
Exactly.
So I don't want to kill that, but I make sure that I check all the tracks also in Audition before I load them into Tractor. They're all set to minus 14 RMS, so I know the loudness throughout the show will all be equal.
Yes, that's brilliant, and I love the idea you've got of running tone through your mixing desk to make sure all your faders are at the right standard.
I'm fortunately very sad, and I do that before every show. I check on my mic, I check on the decks. And just to make sure, because I want everyone to sit back and just, because it's late night radio I tend to do, and I just want everyone to not have a car crash. And the thing with daytime radio, of course, you can make loud, you make a mistake, people are working, not going to notice it.
Exactly.
Late night, if I make a mistake or suddenly a track comes through super loud, it's going to sound awful.
Yes.
It's going to sound terrible. So I just try to make sure that you know what it's like doing live, don't you, so well, that you just want to try and take all the mistakes out
and make it sound good as best you can. Definitely. Oh,
yeah,
David.
Mistakes can happen, whatever. So.
That's amazing. Really appreciate the call. It's always lovely to hear from you.
I love this one.
Thank you. And remind me where you called from, David. Where are you watching from?
I'm based in Sunningdale in Berkshire, but I know you used to work in Slough, and that's where I went to school, funnily enough.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember Licensed Victualler's School in Slough?
Not very well,
Down by the old train station. No, that's right. So Slough, I know exactly where you've been around, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Slough, near, I believe, the train station there, just to talk a little bit about Slough. Sorry for everyone else watching who doesn't know Slough. It's kind of a famous town just west of London, featured in the UK version of The Office, unfortunately, you could say. But it's really improving, though. That centre, there's a big bus station now. The train station, I believe, is preparing for Crossrail, isn't it, and everything? So
that's right. That's right. Yep. There's loads going on around there. You wouldn't recognise it. It's changed so much.
Cool, David. Lovely to hear from you,
Mike, and you. Thanks for everything, Mike. Cheers.
All the best. Cheers. That's David there in Berkshire, calling in. Berkshire here in the UK. Wonderful. I think there was a plethora of gems in David's phone call. He just dropped a load of value in, stuff that I didn't even mention in this show that is really relevant to think about. Like, for instance, running tone through a mixing desk. You can easily do that. If you've never generated tone before in Audition, there's an easy effects, generate tones, and you can just do what I would suggest is go to default and then change the bass frequency to 1000, which is the standard 1 kilohertz tone, and then you can run this through your mixing desk and watch where the meters are on your mixing. So a brilliant way to get levels right, especially if you're doing live. Great stuff there from David. And all the differences between RMS and LUFS. Anyone else wants to fill us in or take that over to the community and chat more about it? Would love to hear more, because I don't think I even know everything about loudness, and I'm desperate to learn more about this subject. So community.musicradiocreative.com is where you need to go to continue the conversation. And I apologise if I didn't mention every comment. I always do my best to get through as many as I can. Thank you to Joe Sami, to David Silk, to the other moderators that have been in today moderating away, and all of the other new people to the show. It's lovely to have you here and watching, and the regular people that always turn up and help to promote the show. I really appreciate you. Can't mention you all by name, but you know who you are. I'm really, really grateful for you. I really hope you've enjoyed today's show, and I'll be back again for another live stream tomorrow, which will be Thursday if you're watching this now in the present as I live stream from 2 p.m. UK time. Be there and have a wonderful Wednesday afternoon.